It's just all these things that I was beating myself up over, and I just was upset and kind of exclaiming like, it's hard to do all of this by myself. And then it was just like, but I will help you. And just like that response of like, you're right here. I think that it took a few times of just getting really frustrated, and finally now I say, I don't demand it obviously, but I say like, hey, let's talk. I have some things I want to know if you can help with them.
Welcome to Women and Work, the show where we take an inside look at how women are overcoming our own unique challenges as we nurture our careers, businesses, and families. I'm Diane Moca, founder and CEO of the MomSub childcare app, and I want you to know that work can fit your life. Our guests are figuring out ways to do that themselves and sharing their insights with you. Today, I'm with Andrea Pikscher. She's a content and social media marketing manager for Ace Social Company, her own firm. We heard about Andrea from her mom, who described her as a mom of 3 little ones who is running her own freelance business. So you are busy, and we thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to come to the studio today.
Yes, you're welcome.
And I asked you before we even started, who's watching the little ones? And you said?
My husband.
So that's great to have that support.
Yes.
We're all about, trying to help women who are working, especially have that village. And I want to find out, in your work world, what were some of the challenges that you think you faced specifically because you were a woman, and how did you deal with those?
Oh boy. Specifically being a woman, I think it's hard because I knew that me personally, I wanted to start a family. And in my previous role, I remember having discussions about, even with the CEO of where I was working, that I felt like when I had started having children, it was hard, that there wasn't a lot of support. There wasn't a ton of a village. And I feel like there are a lot of promises made sometimes that were at least made to me, that when I went on to have a third child, that didn't meet those expectations. And so I felt like, gosh, how do I do this? How do I stay here and be a mom when I feel like the promises that were made of this supportive company that I might have are not there? So I think that was a big challenge for me, was feeling like if I was going to wait for a company to be the perfect company to work for, that it was always going to be missing something that would help me balance being a mother and being a working person.
Mm-hmm. And so were you working full time?
I was. When we had our third, so we have 3, I was working full time, and it was great. It started as 100% remote, take as much medical leave, take as much sick leave, unlimited vacation. And then, kind of as we got past that COVID world, it was, you only get 5 sick days a year. And if your kid is sick, that counts for a sick day. And it just became like, well, how do I do this? It's untenable as a parent. Even though I do have a supportive partner and somebody who will help, it's this idea that, okay, well, if I have to decide to come into work sick, or, it seemed like you almost want me to quit as a mother. And so I felt like I was tired of waiting to find the perfect company when I could just kind of do it myself.
Mm-hmm. Did you try a few places? Did you experience this in one place and then say, okay, it's time to try on my own? Or had you worked at other places and didn't feel like any of them were welcoming, or would be? Maybe you didn't have kids back then.
Sure. So I started my career in theater. I was a performer first, and then
That's hard. Congratulations.
Thank you. My husband and I were both in theater, and we worked at one of the largest equity theaters in the Chicago area. And theater's just hard. If you want to be a parent and do theater, whether you're a performer or a technician or a teacher, the hours are tough. There's not a lot of support. And sometimes places are great, and you can bring your kids and all of that, but the hours of theater are tough. And so then I transitioned into doing social media full time.
Still in the theater industry?
No, I went completely. So I did a lot of social media for the theater I was working at, but then when I left, I kind of went out of the nonprofit and into the for-profit sector and started doing social media for all different kinds of clients. Some of them were theaters, some of them were events companies, and I really loved doing social media because it's very theater adjacent. You're telling the story, you're telling people stories, and I just felt like, and it was right after I'd had my third, and then when it became untenable and just not possible to balance both things, that's when I thought, I mean, my youngest was not even, she was like barely 1. So at that point, you're dealing with 3 kids, your youngest being 1, that it was just like I needed to take a step back. So for a while, I didn't do anything because I thought, well, maybe I'm just home with the kids now. Maybe that's what I'm doing.
And that's a perfectly acceptable choice and a choice
Absolutely.
that we all celebrate when it's a
Yes.
choice that somebody wants
Yes.
and not feels forced into.
Right.
So you sort of ended up in that situation because your work wasn't the way that you had hoped. So when did you realize I'm not going to be a stay-at-home mom for the next 10 years, 5 years, 12 years, 18 years, whatever?
I don't know. I feel like I've always kind of had this desire, this fire within me to create. I mean, I think that's why I was so attracted to theater. Even when I was doing theater, I started my own company called Theater Pros, which was like a LinkedIn, but for theater. Like I've always had this very entrepreneurial spirit. Maybe it comes from my mom, probably. And I just felt like I wanted to create. I really wanted to create and do something. And my company, I specifically want to help small businesses, so people that are just starting out or they have a very small team, or nonprofits, people that, social media just falls on the back burner and they're never going to get to it, or it's hard for them. And so I wanted to help people and be creative at the same time. And it was probably maybe a year into being a stay-at-home mom where like I love being home, I love being available to my kids, but I needed something for me as well.
And so did you start small, like I'll take on a client? Was it someone that reached out to you, or did you say, I'm going to lay down my flag and I'm going to start doing this and I'm going to let people know I have this business and then I'm going to build up from there?
I kind of just went for it. I kind of just said, okay, I'm going to start this. And I started just reaching out to people I knew, and being in the world that I was in, theater world, like, a lot of people that run theater companies or have nonprofits. And so I just kind of went for the people that I already knew and just said, I'm just going to do it and go for it. And that landed me a few clients quickly, which was lovely. So yeah, I just kind of went for it.
So let's take a step back. When you had your first child and then your second child, how did you navigate keeping your full-time job, figuring out what you were going to do with childcare? Was this something that like, oh, I had family or I already knew how it was going to go? Was it a big challenge? How did you deal with it and what ended up happening?
It was tough, especially after my first. I think that society for a long time has kind of made it seem very natural that like, well, you just have a kid and you go back to work and it's really easy. And I, with my first 2 kids, had really bad postpartum depression. So that kind of kicked me as well. And I think that I was lucky in that I did have a village kind of built in. My mom lives not far. My husband is very supportive and helps when he can. And then we searched for nannies. Like that was what we did with our first few kids. Is I was very anxious because I think of my postpartum depression, that to leave them somewhere else where I couldn't just come home and be with them. And so we kind of built our village, but we had the capability to do so. That's not something that's afforded to everyone. So we were lucky that we could afford to do that. And so we kind of built our village that way.
And a lot of people will think of a nanny as something that's like, a luxury only wealthy people can afford. But if you're using a nanny in a way that's like part-time with supplements from other family, if, the grandparents and the dad and mom are all sort of watching at different times and then the nanny's filling in the gap, is that kind of what you did? And did you have a regular schedule? And how easy or difficult was it to find someone if they weren't full-time as a nanny?
It depended. It kind of shifted and changed. I would say for our first 2 kids, we really kind of grew into having a nanny full time for like Monday through Friday. And when we were in theater, it was tough because our hours would get kind of crazy. Sometimes you're working at night. And so that part of it could be balanced with one of us or a parent. And I think for us, we happen to be very lucky. We, just used the care.com apps and it was used what we had in front of us, but found some really great people that stayed with us from our second son being born until our third was born. So, I mean, we found some really great people. So we did end up having a nanny that was with us like Monday through Friday.
And did you have to spend quite a bit of time in like going through the lists on the app and contacting people? What was that process like?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I definitely spent the time. I had a system where I would interview with them, I would have them try like a trial, like come over, hang out with the kid, or we'll meet you at a coffee shop and we'll see how you interact with the kids. And it's something that does take time. I mean, our nanny that we love, she ended up having kids of her own, and so that's why before I quit my job, she left us, and now we're 3 kids in, and I still haven't started that process because it is a process. It takes time, like to find just another babysitter on call. The idea of like calling people, having to set up the play dates to make sure that the kids are comfortable with you. So it's something that does take time, and is tough, especially the more kids you have. So I'm in this place right now where like we're lucky that we can just kind of finagle kids between my husband and I and the grandparents.
So you're working from home. You don't have very many appointments you have to go to or anything.
Nope.
And so you can work around that. But it
Yes.
still would be nice to have somebody when you've got something that hey, I need this, or even to have like regular time period when you're like, I know I can concentrate during these hours on these days to get certain things done. Yeah.
Yes, it would be. And it's summer right now.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's definitely a crazy balancing act, and sometimes my hours are after they're in bed. And that's, not always sustainable, but while it's summer and while they're here, that's the either early in the morning or when they're in bed. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I did with my first business is I was doing it while everyone in the house was asleep.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that's okay. And then at a certain point, you start to realize that it's getting to you, the burnout, and you're not getting the sleep that you need. And and you went through postpartum twice?
Yeah.
But not the third time.
Nope.
You took medication, or you...
Yes. So I talked to my doctors, and I said, the first 2 times were rough. Like the first time it was like, oh, this is really rough. And the second time I was like, I'm going to be great because I've already done it. No. So I did talk to my doctor, and I had medication, and I talked to my husband, and I said, because the first 2 kids we had, he kind of immediately went back to work. And so that was just tough. So he took a full 6 weeks. And that was the first time that I was like, oh, wow, this is as I hope that most parents get the opportunity to do, but I don't think they do, is spend that first little bit enjoying the new life that you've brought into the world together. And so that was, I think what really helped was the medication and support.
So him taking 6 weeks off, you not working for...
I would think it was I think I did 12.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you piggyback them? So did he do 6 weeks and then you did your...
No, I did all mine. Oh, so we did 6 together at the beginning, and then I took another.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you went back, and then that's when you realized, okay, this is not the way I had expected. Did things change in the organization, or you just feel like you changed?
Well, it was kind of what we talked about in the beginning, where there was a lot of like, yes, we're going to support you. And when my husband came back after taking 6 weeks, it was, where were you? Why didn't you answer emails? Why weren't you here when we needed you? When he very much said, I'm taking parental leave for 6 weeks. And it kind of became, okay, but if this is the environment that we're going to be in, it seems like one we're not welcome in. So that was kind of his turning away. And then I kind of followed suit quickly after as well, because it just felt like there wasn't the support that was promised that was going to be there.
You were both in the same place at the same
we were at the same
employer,
place.
and this was, you were both experiencing this.
Yes, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that had to be really tough with 3 kids. At least you weren't going through that postpartum at that point.
Nope, that was a
but there
blessing.
had to be a whole lot of other emotions. How did you get through that period when all of a sudden both of you realized we're in a place we don't want to be? Like, you're both going to start looking for work. You took some time off to be home with the kids.
Yeah. So it was heartbreaking. I think we both thought that was where we were going to spend. I mean, theater is our first love, both of us. And so I think we both thought this is it. Like, our kids are going to grow up running down the aisles of the theater and coming to all these shows with us. And it was kind of like the end of a little dream for us. But, wanting to start a family is a choice, and it's tough. And it was a heartbreak, I think. And I think it really surprised my husband, just because he was not expecting that response when he got back. So yeah, so that was it was really hard. And it's hard because we had a lot of people we loved that we worked with, and it wasn't the people that we worked with either. It was the people that were in charge, and so that was hard because we left a lot of people behind that we loved and we loved creating with. So that was definitely tough. Yeah.
And when you were looking at having one parent stay home, was there ever any consideration of, well, maybe it will be dad will stay home with the kids and mom will go out and work? Was that a part of the conversation? Do you think that more families should think about that? What are your feelings on that?
That's a great question. There wasn't, because my husband has always been the breadwinner, I guess, so to speak. So for him, he was very lucky, and he had actually a lot of job offers almost as soon as he left, which was kind of incredible. And so he was the breadwinner. And so I don't know. I definitely think it's something that more couples should talk about and decide, for them what's going to work best. But we decided based on, well, who's bringing in the money that's helping us pay the bills. And I think if it had been the other way around, he would have happily stayed home with the kids. I don't think he would have had any issue if I was making more money than him. So I think it's what's going to be best for your family.
And when you decided it's time for me to do something for me and I want to have my own business, was it 100% supported with all the people that you knew in your village? Was there anyone that, were the grandparents like, well, you sure you don't want to spend a little bit more time before you start working again? Did you hear any of that or no?
Not from my husband. My husband, 110% supportive, and not from my family really either. I think people were just like, okay, if you think you can do it, like it was just kind of like, how are you going to do that? And it's hard. So there wasn't any like, you can't do it, but it was like, do you really think you want to take on another thing? Because again, my kids now are getting to the age, I have an almost 9-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 3-year-old, and they have activities and they have friends and they have play dates. And so it isn't just them being at home and I need to find a sitter for them. It's, well, now they need to go places and do things and have a childhood. And so yeah, it was just, do you really want to take on one more thing?
And what we hear a lot about, especially in social media, is the overload that moms nowadays feel because they're the default parent. So especially if you're sort of doing this business, from home, as needed, working around the family, and he's working full time. So if the kids, if there's a call from school, if the kids need anything, if they need a ride, all the things that to run a household, the groceries and all that falling on you.
Yeah.
And your clients expect you to deliver, whatever you promise them. So how do you deal with that stress? I know physically you're doing some of the work at night.
Yeah.
And that's how you're getting around sort of the time aspect of it, but the emotional aspect of it, the overload aspect of it, the default parent aspect of it. How are you coping with that?
That is a great question. I don't always, I think, is the answer. I mean, I think, again, I'm still a fairly young mom, and I think I'm still figuring all of it out. But honestly, I feel very lucky that I have a supportive partner. I can say to my husband, I need to step away. I need to go for a drive. I need to go upstairs. Or I have this podcast today. I need you to come home. And he will do whatever he can to make it work. He knows that my time is just as important as his, is just as valuable as his. And so I think that that's the hard thing, is that's, I can't whip up another supportive partner for someone else. But I would say that it is important for your partner to be supportive. And that's, I think, how I'm mostly surviving, is we do have a great partnership. And I sometimes just let the stress be stressful. Like, I think there's sometimes this desire that I feel to, okay, everything's fine and everything's going to be fine. But sometimes I just sit down and go, God, this is just really, really hard. This is just hard. And I also remind myself that it's a season. My kids are going to grow up one day, and that I'm not, unfortunately finding a cure for cancer, that it'll all be okay. It'll all get done. It'll all work out. But sometimes I just let myself sit and be upset or take a moment and say, this is hard. So really having a supportive partner, and sometimes just knowing that, yeah, this is hard.
And I give you props for asking, because I think the problem with a lot of women is maybe they have a supportive partner, but they feel this guilt
Yeah.
almost of, I should do it all myself, especially if I'm kind of the default stay-at-home parent.
Yeah.
I'm the one that's just kind of running a few clients on the side.
Mm-hmm.
And I should be the one if buying the groceries, because when he does it, he gets all the wrong things. And I should be the one, I mean, I learned a long time ago, like, he loads the dishwasher wrong, but who cares?
Right, right,
If he
right.
loads it, he loads it. And I don't even think about that anymore.
Yeah.
There's so many things that in your mind you could think, like, they're not doing it the way I would. They're doing it wrong.
Right.
But it's better to have somebody help you than to have all those burdens. So what do you think allows you to be able to step up and say, I need this time alone. I need to go out with my girlfriends. I'm going to have a weekend, of doing this adventure, and it's going to be on my own, and being able to ask and feel okay with that, because some moms don't.
It wasn't an overnight thing. It wasn't something I always felt comfortable doing. And I still kind of fall back into the patterns of, but I'm the mom, I still do that. I honestly think it's because my bubble just burst one day and I said all these things to him and he was like, well, I can help. And I was like, wait,
Tell me what
really?
happened before the bubble burst. I want to hear this story.
I mean, I don't know that I have a very exciting story, but it was just a day where it's, the dogs had made a mess for the 100th time. The kids are needing to go this way and that. I didn't get to the store like I wanted to get to the store, and it's just all these things that I was beating myself up over, and I just was upset and kind of exclaiming like, it's hard to do all of this by myself. And then it was just like, but I will help you. And just like that response of like, yeah, you're right here. And so I think it's not always something that I'm great at. Like, I think, again, I will still fall into those patterns of, but it's my responsibility, or feeling guilty because he's at work all day. But I mean, really, I think sometimes we forget that, not always, but sometimes being the person that gets to walk out the door and leave for a few hours, it can be easier. It can be less stressful because you are only worried about the thing in front of you and not the 3 other people talking to you all day and, in your ear. Yes, and where we're going. So I think that it took a few times of just getting really frustrated. And finally now I say, I don't demand it, obviously, but I say like, hey, let's talk. I have some things I want to know if you can help with them. And so yeah, no magical moment, just more hitting my wall and just kind of blurting it out and him being like, but I'll help.
That was a magic moment, though.
Sure.
I mean, because you did lash out a little.
Yeah.
Because you had all this pent-up frustration that you'd been kind of stuffing down. You probably didn't even realize it.
Yeah.
You were just doing the things. And every time you would do one more thing and one more thing, you're like, ugh, another thing and another thing. Well, that's just my life. It's just hard. It's just hard. And then you're like, it's too hard.
Yeah.
It's too hard. And he said, well, I'm right here. I can help. And so he had to step up and say that instead of you saying, why don't you help? He said, I can help. And so that clicked.
Yeah.
After that, now you think it's getting too hard. Oh, he can help.
Yep.
And have you done some special things for you? Have you ever taken a girls' weekend nice?
Oh, yeah. I have a great group of girlfriends from college, and we have a book club, and we'll go away to like Wisconsin and sit and read books once a year. And I'm going to a musical tonight with my mom, and like, it's not a big deal. And I think what's really hard is I don't know that every partner would step up and say, I can help.
Not everyone has a partner.
Right. And so not everyone has a partner. Not everyone has a partner that may step up and say that. So I think that's the challenging thing, is like, how do you ask for that help? But yeah, I do stuff for myself. I wouldn't say all the time, but I'm feeling less guilty asking for it, I guess.
Good. We want to get rid of that mom guilt. And if someone doesn't have a partner, they still have to ask for help. Whether you ask for help from family, or you find someone you can pay to help, or you find an agency that can help, or a mentor, or a community organization, just reaching out for help.
Yeah.
And that's what you did after dealing with your postpartum. You reached out to your doctor and said, I can't go through this again. And they had helped.
Yes.
So there's so many resources out there, but they're useless unless we reach out and take advantage of them, or at least ask. And sometimes you don't even know where to go, but you ask one person and then they send you somewhere else and they send you somewhere else. And I ask for an interview and someone says, talk to my daughter.
Yes.
So, I love you sharing sort of these messy parts of
Yeah.
life that happen when you're in the thick of things. Because we talk to people sometimes who are at the stage where I am. The kids are grown. I still remember that, but it's not the same as I'm experiencing it now. I'm going to go home and the kids are going to be like, where
Yeah.
for you.
Yes.
Mine are like, were you gone? They don't
Yeah.
notice.
Yeah, we're
They're
not there
moving
yet.
out. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I thank you for
Yeah.
taking that time and sharing with us, those experiences so that it can help others.
Yes.
And if you were inspired by today's story, we want you to remember to share it with a friend, leave a review, and subscribe to meet our next amazing guest. If you want to invest in a solution to the childcare crisis, check out MomSub's equity crowdfunding campaign at momsub.com/invest or connect with MomSub on any of our social media pages. Remember, your career, your choices, and your success are yours to define. Keep pushing boundaries and spreading your love and encouragement to other women who need it.